Imagine celebrating your 1-month wedding anniversary at your favorite restaurant, only to vanish into thin air that same night, never to be seen alive again. Before we dive deep into one of Illinois' most haunting cold cases, I need you to hit that subscribe button right now and ring the notification bell, because what you are about to hear will change everything you think you know about small-town America. This is the story of Michael and Patricia Brennan, and I promise you, the truth behind their disappearance will absolutely shock you to your core. October 14, 1978 was supposed to be a perfect autumn evening in Millbrook County, Illinois. The air carried that crisp scent of dying leaves and wood smoke that makes small-town America feel like a postcard. Michael Brennan adjusted his tie in the rearview mirror of his powder blue Ford Granada, stealing glances at his bride of just 3 weeks. Patricia sat beside him, her auburn hair catching the last golden rays of sunset as they drove home from Romano's Italian restaurant. They had everything ahead of them. Michael, 24 years old, worked at the local grain elevator, his calloused hands already showing the promise of a man who understood honest work. Patricia, 22, taught 2nd grade at Millbrook Elementary. Children adored her gentle way of explaining why leaves changed colors and how caterpillars transformed into butterflies. They had just moved into a modest 2-bedroom house on Elm Street, painting the kitchen yellow together the previous weekend, laughing as they got more paint on each other than the walls. This was 1978 in Millbrook County, where nobody locked their doors at night. Crime was something that happened in Chicago, not in a town where the biggest excitement was the annual Corn Festival and Friday night football games that drew half the population. The Brennans represented everything good about small-town America. Young love, simple pleasures, and the unshakable belief that tomorrow would always come. But at 9:47 p.m., according to the last receipt found in Michael's wallet, their Ford Granada pulled out of Romano's parking lot for the final time anyone would see them alive. The drive home should have taken 18 minutes along County Road 47, a straight stretch of asphalt bordered by harvested cornfields and the occasional farmhouse porch light glowing in the distance. Patricia had called her mother earlier that evening, promising to stop by Sunday after church to help with canning the last of the season's peaches. When Deputy Sheriff Tom Weber found their car at 6:15 the next morning, it sat abandoned on a gravel service road 3 miles from their house. The driver's door hung open like a mouth frozen mid-scream. Keys dangled from the ignition, engine cold, headlights dim and yellowing in the morning mist. Patricia's purse lay scattered on the passenger seat, her lipstick and compact mirror strewn across the floor, as if someone had searched through it frantically. Michael's wallet remained untouched in the glove compartment, $43 still folded inside. But it was the tire tracks that would haunt Weber for decades. Deep grooves in the soft earth showed where another vehicle had pulled up behind the Granada, close enough that drivers could have spoken through open windows. The tracks suggested a larger vehicle, possibly a pickup truck, that had arrived after the Brennans stopped, or had forced them to stop. The impressions led from the gravel road toward the tree line, then simply vanished where the ground turned hard and rocky. Weber, a 28-year veteran who had seen his share of domestic disputes and Saturday night bar fights, had never encountered anything like this. The scene felt wrong in ways he could not articulate. Too clean. Too deliberate, no signs of struggle, no blood, no torn clothing. Just 2 people who had simply vanished from their car as if the October darkness had swallowed them whole. The morning sun revealed one more detail that would torment investigators for decades. Patricia's wedding ring sat on the dashboard, still warm to the touch, where she would never have placed it willingly. The young woman who had been raised Catholic and attended St. Mary's every Sunday since childhood would never have removed her wedding ring voluntarily, especially not after just 3 weeks of marriage. Giuseppe Romano, the restaurant owner, recalled serving the couple their anniversary dinner that evening. He remembered them sharing the house special and seeming happy, maybe a little tipsy from the wine they had ordered to celebrate their 1-month milestone. They left together around 9:30. He kept repeating to anyone who would listen, as if saying it enough times might somehow bring them back to his restaurant alive and safe. As news of the disappearance spread through Millbrook County that Saturday morning, neighbors and friends gathered at the Brennan house on Elm Street, trying to make sense of what could have happened to the beloved young couple. Patricia had been one of the most popular teachers at the elementary school, known for staying after hours to help struggling students and organizing school plays that became community events. Michael was respected at the grain elevator, where his supervisors praised his work ethic and reliability. Both families converged on Millbrook within hours of learning about the disappearance. Michael's brother David drove down from Chicago, while Patricia's parents, Robert and Janet Sullivan, arrived from their farm outside of town. The strong men who had worked the land for generations broke down completely when they saw the abandoned car, and realized their children had simply vanished without reason. Sheriff Frank Kowalski had run Millbrook County's law enforcement for 16 years, but his department consisted of himself, 2 full-time deputies, and a part-time dispatcher who worked weekends. The entire investigative toolkit fit in a cardboard box: a Polaroid camera with a sometimes working flash, a magnifying glass inherited from his predecessor, and a fingerprinting kit that had gathered dust since 1973. When Tom Weber radioed about the abandoned Granada, Kowalski's first instinct was to treat it as a domestic situation that would resolve itself by dinner time. Young couples fought. Young couples made dramatic gestures. Young couples usually came home when they got hungry or cold. But the wedding ring on the dashboard bothered him. Patricia Brennan had been raised Catholic. Taking off her wedding ring would have required more than a simple marital spat. By the 3rd day, with no sign of Michael and Patricia, Kowalski reluctantly called Illinois State Police. Detective Ray Hartman arrived from Springfield in a sedan that looked impossibly sophisticated next to the county's aging patrol vehicles. Hartman spent 2 hours at the scene, photographing tire tracks and collecting soil samples that would sit in evidence bags for the next 41 years without ever being properly analyzed. The detective interviewed Romano's staff, but the restaurant had been busy that Friday night and nobody remembered anything unusual about the young couple's behavior. Giuseppe Romano recalled serving them, noted that they seemed happy and left together. He kept repeating this as if the repetition might somehow change the outcome of that evening. Hartman's report, filed on October 23, 1978, concluded that Michael and Patricia Brennan had likely left voluntarily, possibly due to marital difficulties or financial pressures unknown to family members. The case was classified as missing persons rather than potential homicide, effectively guaranteeing it would receive minimal resources and attention. Within a month, the tire track photographs had been misfiled. The soil samples stored in a courthouse basement where a leaky pipe would eventually contaminate half the evidence boxes from that era. The Brennan and Sullivan families refused to accept official indifference. Mary Brennan transformed her dining room into a makeshift command center, covering the polished table surface with maps marked in red ink, telephone directories with circled numbers, and photographs of Michael and Patricia printed at the local pharmacy. David Brennan drove to Chicago every weekend, visiting hospitals, homeless shelters, and police stations, carrying manila envelopes filled with missing person flyers photocopied at his own expense. Robert Sullivan mortgaged his house to hire a private investigator from Springfield, who Eddie Kowalski, who claimed to specialize in missing persons cases, charged $50 a day plus expenses, promising breakthrough leads that never materialized. He followed reported sightings in Missouri, Iowa, and Wisconsin, each requiring another payment, another extension of hope that collapsed into bitter disappointment. By Christmas 1979, volunteer searches had dwindled to family members only. The community's initial surge of support gradually faded as people returned to their own lives and problems. The Brennans and Sullivans found themselves increasingly isolated, their obsession with finding Michael and Patricia becoming a source of uncomfortable silence at church gatherings and town festivals. Mary Brennan began calling the sheriff's office every Monday morning asking about weekend developments. Kowalski's responses grew shorter with each call. "We are still investigating" became "we will call if anything comes up," which eventually became uncomfortable pauses followed by promises to look into it. The private investigator disappeared in March 1980, taking the Sullivans' final payment and leaving only a forwarding address that led to an empty post office box. The case grew cold not because of lack of clues, but because of a system unprepared to recognize and pursue them. Local residents had seen things that night, things they never reported because they seemed insignificant, or because they did not trust their own perceptions. Henrietta Welsh, who lived nearest to where the car was found, had been awakened around 10:30 by what sounded like a truck backfiring several times. She looked out her bedroom window but saw only darkness and distant headlight glow. Carl Martinez, a long-distance trucker, remembered seeing a pickup truck parked on the shoulder near the service road sometime after 10 p.m. that Friday. The truck's tailgate was down and someone appeared to be loading something heavy. Martinez had slowed, wondering if the driver needed help, but the truck suddenly pulled away with lights off, disappearing into the maze of farm roads crisscrossing the county. Neither Welsh nor Martinez came forward with their observations. In a small community where gossip traveled faster than news, both worried about becoming involved in something that might bring unwanted attention. They told themselves that if the information was important, police would have asked specifically. The case became another entry in the growing national database of missing persons, joining thousands who had simply vanished without explanation. By 1980, Michael and Patricia Brennan existed primarily in archived newspaper articles and fading memories of elderly residents who occasionally mentioned the missing couple when discussing local history. The case that should have launched a massive search effort became a cautionary tale about small-town law enforcement limitations in an era before DNA analysis, computer databases, and coordinated investigations. The summer of 2019 brought drought unlike anything Millbrook County had experienced in living memory. Corn crops withered in fields that normally produced Illinois' finest grain. The Sangamon River dropped to levels not seen since record-keeping began. Old-timers compared it to Dust Bowl stories their grandparents told, watching helplessly as topsoil blew across barren fields. It was this drought that revealed secrets the land had kept hidden for 41 years. Thompson's Quarry, abandoned since the 1960s, had always been partially filled with groundwater, creating a murky pond popular with local fishermen despite posted no trespassing signs. As water levels dropped through July and August, the pond shrank, exposing limestone shelves and debris submerged for decades. On August 23, 2019, bass fisherman Kevin O'Sullivan was working shallow water near the quarry's eastern edge when his line snagged something large and metallic. O'Sullivan, a retired machinist, assumed he had hooked old mining equipment or discarded appliances that farmers sometimes dumped in remote locations. When he waded into ankle-deep water to free his line, he found himself staring at what appeared to be a car's roof. The vehicle sat upright on the quarry floor as if someone had driven straight into water and let it sink. Through murky water he could make out the distinctive shape of a 1970s sedan, chrome bumpers and window frames still visible beneath biological growth claiming the metal surfaces. O'Sullivan called 911, his voice shaking as he tried to explain his discovery. Sheriff Tom Weber, now 58 and graying, arrived within 20 minutes once Deputy Amanda Fisher radioed that the discovery appeared legitimate. Weber stared at the partially submerged vehicle with growing dread. The drought had dropped water levels enough to reveal the car's license plate, though decades of submersion made numbers difficult to read. Detective Sarah Martinez from Illinois State Police Major Case Squad arrived that evening, bringing crime scene technicians and underwater recovery specialists. Martinez, a 15-year veteran, recognized immediately they were dealing with more than simple accident or insurance fraud. Cars did not typically end up in abandoned quarries by chance, especially cars reported missing decades earlier. The recovery operation began at dawn August 24, using specialized equipment to extract the vehicle from its muddy grave. As the sedan emerged, decades of accumulated sediment and plant growth sloughed away, revealing a powder blue Ford Granada with Illinois plates. Weber felt his stomach tighten as he read the license number. The car pulled from Thompson's Quarry was the same Granada Michael and Patricia Brennan had been driving October 14, 1978. Inside the vehicle, crime scene technicians found personal belongings sealed in waterlogged evidence bags. Two people who had vanished from the world 41 years earlier. The discovery transformed a cold case into active homicide investigation, revealing secrets buried deeper than anyone imagined. Illinois State Police Crime Laboratory had capabilities in 2019 that would have seemed like science fiction to investigators in 1978. Detective Martinez watched forensic technicians process the Granada's interior using tools that could extract DNA from 40-year-old samples. The car's interior contradicted everything the original investigation assumed. Water damage destroyed much upholstery and paper materials, but metal frame and harder surfaces preserved crucial evidence in anaerobic environment that maintained forensic materials. Dr. Alina Rodriguez, the lab's chief forensic pathologist, made the first breakthrough. Examining fabric fibers embedded in the dashboard, under microscopic analysis, the fibers proved to be manila hemp rope fragments commonly used for farm work. The rope showed evidence of being cut with sharp blade rather than frayed through wear. More disturbing was interior damage pattern. The passenger side door handle had been torn completely away, leaving scratches suggesting someone fought desperately to escape. The scratches matched patterns fingernails would make when dragged across painted metal under extreme stress. Luminol testing revealed trace blood amounts on passenger seat and floor mat. Blood that survived 4 decades because it soaked into protected fabric fibers. The breakthrough came from Patricia's purse, stored in evidence for 41 years. When Martinez requested reprocessing using modern hair extraction techniques, technicians discovered something 1978 investigators missed. Hidden in the inner pocket was torn fabric pulled from someone's clothing during struggle. The fragment contained epithelial cells preserved by dry environment. Using polymerase chain reaction amplification, technicians extracted complete Na profile from the sample. A profile matching neither Michael nor Patricia. The unknown Da belonged to a male. When run through combined Da index system database, it produced no immediate matches among known criminals. However, the profile could be compared against voluntary samples from potential suspects. Digital enhancement of tire track photographs from 1978 revealed details invisible to investigators using 1970s technology. Tread patterns matched Goodyear Wrangler tires commonly fitted to full-size pickup trucks. One tire showed distinctive wear pattern caused by misaligned front-end components, unique to specific vehicle, potentially identifiable decades later if the truck still existed. Forensic evidence painted picture of planned attack rather than random encounter. Someone forced the Brennans off-road, restrained them with rope, transported them to quarry where their car was submerged. The perpetrator was methodical and organized, suggesting someone familiar with local area who understood evidence disposal. But the most chilling discovery came from odometer and fuel gauge analysis. The vehicle had been driven 15 miles after leaving Romanos, far more than 3 miles to where originally found abandoned. Detective Martinez began with obvious candidates. Individuals questioned during original investigation, family members with access to the couple, anyone mentioned in sparse case files. The list was disappointingly short, consisting mainly of Romano's staff and customers present October 14th. Most were deceased or had moved away decades earlier. The breakthrough came from unexpected source. Martha Brennan, Michael's sister who worked at courthouse, had kept detailed personal records of everyone she suspected might have been involved. Her notebooks, maintained obsessively for 20 years, dates and observations official investigators never documented. One name appeared repeatedly. James Morrison. In 1978, Morrison had been a 32-year-old construction contractor specializing in farm building projects. He owned blue Ford pickup and had done work for several families, including minor repairs at Romano's just months before the Brennans disappeared. Martha's notes indicated Morrison had been drinking at Henley's Tavern October 14th, making comments about the young couple that struck patrons as inappropriate and aggressive. Morrison never been officially questioned despite witnesses reporting hostile remarks about Patricia's appearance and crude suggestions about what he would do to stuck-up college girls. Original investigators dismissed these as typical bar talk, not recognizing potential indicators of violent intent. By 2019, Morrison was 73, considered one of Millbrook County's most respected citizens. His construction company had built half the area's new houses over 4 decades. He served as deacon at First Baptist Church, married to high school sweetheart Dorothy with 3 grown children working in family business. His community reputation was spotless, built on honest work and charitable contributions. When Martinez approached Morrison September 15, requesting voluntary DNA sample, his reaction struck her as unusual. Most innocent individuals eagerly cooperated with efforts to solve decades-old murder, especially one haunting the community. Morrison became agitated and defensive, demanding to know why he was singled out, insisting he needed attorney consultation before providing biological samples. The legal process of obtaining court-ordered sample took 3 weeks, during which Morrison's behavior became increasingly erratic. Neighbors reported seeing him burning papers behind his workshop despite county ordinances prohibiting open burning during drought. His wife Dorothy told church friends James had been having nightmares and walking floors at night, completely out of character for a man known for steady demeanor and regular habits. On October 6, the DNA comparison results arrived. The genetic profile extracted from fabric fragment in Patricia's purse matched Morrison's DNA with probability of 1 in 7.2 billion, essentially confirming Morrison had direct physical contact with Patricia during her disappearance. The match sent shockwaves through investigative team, raising profound questions about how respected community leader managed hiding double murder involvement for 4 decades. Even more disturbing was realization Morrison had been living among victims' families, attending same church services, participating in community events, maintaining peaceful law-abiding facade while 2 families suffered decades of unanswered grief. The DNA evidence was overwhelming, but Martinez needed more than genetic matches to build prosecutable case. The arrest warrant was signed 6 October 23, 2019, exactly 41 years 9 days after the Brennans vanished. Martinez assembled team including state police, FBI cold case specialists, and Sheriff Weber, who requested presence when the man haunting his career was finally taken into custody. Morrison's house on Maple Street sat in Millbrook's most established neighborhood, surrounded by mature oaks and well-maintained lawns. The white colonial with green shutters looked like Norman Rockwell painting. When police convoy pulled into driveway 7 a.m., Dorothy Morrison was making breakfast. The same routine followed for 43 years of marriage. Morrison offered no resistance as handcuffs clicked around his wrists, but his face drained color until he looked aged 20 years and 20 seconds. The confident contractor who built half Millbrook County's infrastructure was replaced by frail elderly man whose hands shook as he was helped into Detective Martinez's sedan. News exploded across Millbrook like wildfire. By noon, 3 television crews had set up interviewing anyone willing to speak about Morrison and Brennan case. The story dominated radio stations where callers expressed shock, disbelief, and dawning recognition of behavior patterns dismissed as harmless eccentricity. At First Baptist Church, where Morrison served as deacon for 12 years, Pastor William Thompson struggled addressing congregation torn between loyalty and horror. The psychological impact went deeper than simple shock. For 41 years, the community lived with comforting assumption that whoever killed the Brennans was outsider, a transient who moved on. The revelation that killer had been living among them, attending church services, building houses, participating in civic organizations, shattered fundamental assumptions about safety and trust in small-town America. Dorothy Morrison found herself suddenly isolated in community where she had been respected for decades. The trial lasted 3 weeks, February 2020. Morrison's defense argued DNA evidence could have transferred innocently, pointing out he had done construction work throughout county. But prosecution's case was overwhelming, supported by witness testimony, forensic evidence, and Morrison's behavior following identification. On February 28, after deliberating 6 hours, the jury returned guilty verdicts on all charges. 2 counts: first-degree murder, kidnapping, and concealment of homicide. Judge Patricia Kowalski, daughter of original sheriff, sentenced Morrison to life without parole, noting his crimes destroyed 2 lives and inflicted decades of suffering on families and community. The case that began with tire tracks leading nowhere ended with 73-year-old man being led away in shackles. But questions it raised about trust, evil, and secrets ordinary people carry would linger in Millbrook County long after media attention faded. If you found this investigation compelling, Hit subscribe and share your thoughts about how communities can protect themselves from predators hiding behind respectability masks.